China's path to rebuilding after the Opium Wars and the century of humiliation began from a state of profound fracture. By the mid-19th century, China was no longer the confident empire that had once seen itself as the center of civilization. The defeats in the Opium Wars exposed the weakness of the Qing state, not only in military capacity, but also in governance, economic organization, and its outdated worldview. Foreign powers carved spheres of influence, forced unequal treaties, and extracted privileges that cut into China's sovereignty. Internally, famines, corruption, regional warlords, and the collapse of central authority created a nation struggling to hold itself together. Rebuilding was not a single event, but a long, uneven process marked by attempts, failures, revolutions, and radical transformations. The first efforts to rebuild began within the late Qing dynasty itself. Realizing the technological gap between China and the Western powers, reformers launched the self-strengthening movement, which attempted to modernize China's military and industry by importing Western machines, weapons, and knowledge while preserving traditional political structures. However, these reforms were limited by court conservatism and factional conflicts. Modern shipyards, arsenals, and schools emerged, but they could not fundamentally alter the political structure that resisted deeper change. The defeat in the First Sino-Japanese War was a devastating signal that the self-strengthening movement had failed to solve the underlying problems. After this collapse, more radical reformers pushed for the 100 Days Reform, an attempt to rebuild China's education system, economy, and bureaucracy into a modern nation-state capable of competing with global powers. But resistance from conservative elites halted the movement abruptly. The dynasty's inability to reform itself led to the growing belief that only a complete political transformation could save the nation. When the Qing government failed again during the Boxer Rebellion and foreign armies marched into Beijing, it became clear to many Chinese intellectuals that China's revival could not rely on half measures. The fall of the Qing dynasty in 1911 opened the door for China's reconstruction as a republic. But instead of national unity, China entered a period of warlord fragmentation. Regional militaries seized power while the central government struggled to impose authority. The humiliation did not end with the republic. Foreign powers still controlled concessions, Japan expanded its influence, and China's economy remained dependent on external forces. Rebuilding in this period meant searching for an ideological direction. Liberalism, nationalism, socialism, all competing for the right path to revive the country. Thinkers like Sun Yat-sen offered visions for national rejuvenation, but political instability made implementation difficult. As foreign pressure intensified, especially from Japan's invasions, the Chinese population increasingly recognized that national unification was essential for rebuilding. Amid warlord chaos, new political forces emerged. The nationalist government attempted modernization, building railways, creating new industries, reforming the currency, and promoting national education. While corruption and internal conflict limited effectiveness, these reforms marked the first large-scale state-led effort to modernize China. China's rebuilding accelerated dramatically during the war against Japan. Although the conflict brought destruction, displacement, and unimaginable suffering, it also forged a stronger sense of national identity. The Chinese people realized that survival required not only military resistance, but also the reconstruction of political unity, industrial capacity, and social cohesion. Wartime mobilization brought new factories inland, new schools and universities, and new administrative systems that would later form the backbone of a modern state. The war became a painful but decisive turning point because it forced China to industrialize under extreme pressure. After Japan's defeat, China faced another crisis, civil war. The struggle between the nationalists and the communists would determine the direction of the country's reconstruction. Each side saw its vision as the true path to saving China from humiliation. The communist victory in 1949 unified most of the country under a central government for the first time in decades, providing the political foundation needed for large-scale rebuilding. The early decades of the People's Republic focused on land reform, literacy campaigns, and building heavy industries, aiming to free China from dependence on foreign powers. These policies dramatically changed the social and economic structure of the country, redistributing resources and creating the conditions for long-term development. Although the following years were marked by internal setbacks and political campaigns, China's ambition to rebuild never disappeared. By the late 1970s, the reform and opening up era transformed the nation once again. China moved from isolation to global engagement, opening markets, welcoming foreign investment, and encouraging private enterprise. This shift allowed China to integrate into global trade networks and accumulate the capital, technology, and expertise needed to modernize rapidly. The economic zones along the coast became symbols of a new era, where China rebuilt not only its economy, but also its confidence on the world stage. Reconstruction after a century of humiliation did not rely on a single leader or a single moment. It was a collective transformation driven by intellectuals, workers, soldiers, farmers, and generations who refused to accept decline as destiny. China's rebuilding combined painful lessons from foreign invasions, experimentation with multiple political models, and a willingness to adopt new ideas while preserving national identity. The country moved from being carved up by foreign powers to becoming one of the world's largest economies, showing that rebuilding is not only about restoring past strength, but creating a new foundation for the future. China's rise today is the cumulative result of those long struggles. From the ruins left by the Opium Wars to the complexities of the modern global system, every stage of China's reconstruction was shaped by external pressures and internal reinvention. The story is not only about regaining sovereignty and economic power, but also about rebuilding a sense of national dignity. The century of humiliation left deep scars, but it also fueled the determination to never again fall victim to external domination. Today's China stands as a reminder that rebuilding is possible even after profound collapse, as long as a nation persists in reform, unity, and the pursuit of its own path.